Module 7, you learned all about natural equilibrium, where supply meets demand and the market is cleared. So all goods that are produced at that price are purchased at that price. So that's what happens without intervention. If there is a surplus, there's too much, the price will naturally fall. If there's a shortage, there isn't enough, and the price will naturally rise. So that's how equilibrium works without government intervention. Module 8 is all about government intervention and price controls. This is when the equilibrium price is considered unfair. So certain groups will petition the government and ask for the government to step in and change the prices for specific goods. One example is the minimum wage. This would be a situation where consumers, workers in this case, ask the government to raise a price. They thought that the equilibrium price, the going price for wages, was too low, and they had the government step in to set a higher price for wages. The next example is rent control. This is people asking the government to lower a price. Rents in some cities, like New York City, were considered to be too high, and people that worked in the city thought that they couldn't afford to live in the city. So they got the government to step in and make it so that rents couldn't go above a certain amount. So minimum wage, they can't go below a certain amount. Rent control, they can't go above a certain account. Both of these cases are governments intervening and setting a price that is not the equilibrium price because the equilibrium price is seen as unfair. So anytime there is intervention in a market to set a price that's not equilibrium, we're going to call that a price control. This is a legal restriction. So the government sets laws on how high or low a market price may go. These are in response to buyers and sellers. So you saw on the last slide that these are often from the complaints of consumers, and many of them are, but not all of them. So the two major categories of price controls are price ceilings and price floors. Price ceilings, a price can't go above a certain amount, it'll hit the ceiling. A price floor, the price can't go below a certain amount. One of these is going to be preferred by consumers. One of them will be preferred by suppliers. So think about which one would appeal to each group. There will be some exceptions, but in general, consumers prefer one of these two and producers prefer the other. I know that my students often have a hard time figuring out the difference between a price ceiling and a price floor. And I think their gut instinct is to look at a picture of supply and demand and just pick. So oftentimes people will look at the picture on the left and say, oh, that's below, that's a price floor. And oh, the other one to the right, that's above, that's a price ceiling. But those are wrong. So let me show you a trick to how to remember the proper way to know which is which. So if you recall with surpluses and shortages, every market is trying to return to equilibrium. If the price is too high, if it's above equilibrium, it's naturally going to fall. If the price is too low, it's below equilibrium, the price is naturally going to rise. So that's what prices do in markets normally. Price controls are stopping that from happening. So if you imagine a stick figure and they're trying to return to equilibrium, what's getting in their way? So on the left, this person is below equilibrium. Where he currently is below equilibrium price. So he's trying to return up to equilibrium. But what's happening? He's on his way up and he's hitting his head. If he's hitting his head, this is a price ceiling. I know that's confusing because it's underneath, but the point is that the price is naturally trying to rise. The price ceiling stops it from rising. On the right, you have a price that is above equilibrium, so it's naturally going to fall. But what's stopping this guy from getting to equilibrium? The floor. He can't go any lower. So this one is a price floor on the right. On the left, it's a price ceiling. So go ahead, if it helps you, to draw little stick figures. If the person's hitting their head, it's a ceiling. They can't go any higher. If the person's hitting their feet, it's a floor. They can't go any lower. So hopefully that little device will help you keep these visuals straight. Now that you know what price ceilings and price floors look like on supply and demand models, let's talk about how they function, why they exist, and some examples for each of them. So a price ceiling, as the name implies, is a maximum price. The price cannot go above the ceiling. That is a limit. So which group do you think would prefer price ceilings? Consumers or producers? Consumers. They're the ones that tend to complain that a price is too high. Why would a producer ever say, that price is too high, I don't want to be paid that high of a price for that good? So, price ceilings are requested by consumers. Here are some examples. During World War II, there was a lot of shortages because most of our resources are being focused on getting things ready for the troops. We were rationing butter and flour and all kinds of major commodities. Now, naturally, if something is scarce, the price of it's going to rise. But the government was concerned that if the prices for all of these basic things, milk and bread, that people bought on a daily basis, skyrocketed, then it would really hurt our economy even more. It's starting to get out of the Great Depression. That would have been a really bad time. So the government initiated price ceilings on a lot of those resources during the war. Similar idea, oil prices in the 1970s, there was an embargo and oil access in America was limited. It was made scarce. Normally, this would make the price skyrocket, but our economy really needs oil in order to ship goods, for people to drive to work. So again, the government stepped in and made it so that oil could not go above a certain amount. And then New York City apartments, that's the rent control example that we saw before, where people could not afford to live in the city. Apartments in New York City are very limited. They're scarce. I think you're getting the memo. When things are limited, the prices tend to rise. But in this case, they made some rent controls. So there are still some elderly people in New York City who are living in rent-controlled apartments. This rent control does not still go into effect, so new people that move in don't get the same benefits. If the equilibrium price is considered too high, then a price ceiling is set below the equilibrium price. So in this case, the equilibrium price is $3. But if something in the economy, maybe consumers are saying that price is unfair, we need this good to survive, and it's way too high, then the government might decide to set a price ceiling, in this case at $2. Which means that the price can be anything below that price ceiling. So if firms wanted to sell the good for $1, $1.50, 75 cents, anything below the price ceiling is totally fine. Now, the key thing here is that a price ceiling set above equilibrium price would have no effect. So let's say that people wanted to do a price ceiling at $5. A price ceiling means that the price can't go above that amount. That is the definition of a price ceiling. Now, prices are naturally trying to return to equilibrium. So prices below equilibrium are trying to rise, and a price ceiling would stop them. But prices above equilibrium are naturally trying to fall, and a price ceiling wouldn't stop a price from falling. It only stops a price from going up. And anything above equilibrium is naturally going to fall, so a price ceiling above equilibrium is totally meaningless. It has no effect whatsoever. Price ceilings only work if they're below equilibrium. Here we have a table showing the market for tacos. You could take this table and plot it into a supply and demand graph in order to see where they intersect to find equilibrium. Or you could just think it through. Now, my question for you is, what is the definition of equilibrium? It's where what two things intersect? Supply and demand. So when we're trying to find equilibrium, completely ignore this column. The price column doesn't matter. Where do supply and demand meet? In other words, they're going to intersect at the exact same number. So what number is that? It is 5. Because 5, you have the same demand and supply. So the amount that is supplied will equal the amount that is demanded. Remember, that's market clearing. So 5 is our equilibrium quantity. Now, our equilibrium price is also 5, but that is just coincidental. This could have been 8. This could have been 42 cents. It just so happens that the price is the same as the quantity here. That could have been a different number, and 5 still would have been your equilibrium quantity, just to point that out there. So that'll tell you your numbers for equilibrium price, equilibrium quantity. Now, that's market clearing. So what if consumers said, we really want tacos for $1? That's all we're willing to pay. Well, at $1, they're going to demand 9. They would love more and more and more tacos if they were cheap, but the supply will be less. So will that create a surplus or a shortage? That's going to be a shortage. Demand far exceeds supply, a shortage of 8. If firms decided they want to charge $8 for taco, that's a lot of money. Maybe they're really, really high-end steak tacos with all kinds of fine ingredients. There are going to be some people that want these really fancy tacos, but only 2 people. But suppliers would love to supply more. So if they're supplying 8 but demand is 2, is that a shortage or a surplus? That is a surplus. There's a lot more supplied than demanded, a surplus of 6. So just to see that you can figure out surpluses, shortages, equilibrium price, market clearing, everything looking at a table, not just a supply and demand model itself. So we're going to use this exact same table to talk about price controls. So we remember that 5 is our equilibrium. So this is the natural market clearing price in our economy. Now, what if consumers say, that's crazy, I refuse to spend $5 for a taco, and they write letters to their congressman and they go out and they say, I will not buy tacos for more than $3. We need to make it against the law to sell tacos for more than $3. Okay, you can do that, but at $3, the demand is 7 and the supply is 3. So if demand is bigger than supply, we have a shortage. How big is the shortage? Well, you take the bigger number. Remember, these are never negative. So quantity demanded, 7, minus quantity supplied, 3, equals 4. So if there are price controls, they can do that, but it does create shortages or surpluses in the economy. Now that we know what a price ceiling is, let's talk about the effects of the price ceiling on a market. The first effect is inefficient allocation. Allocation is how resources are distributed throughout an economy. If it's inefficient, that means they're not being distributed equally, fairly, equitably through that economy. So, is a price ceiling good or is a price ceiling bad? I hope you're getting the memo. in econ that very few things are good or bad simply. So this is it depends. So that price ceiling on tacos was good for the people who got the $3 taco. If tacos used to sell for $5 and now they sell for $3, it's great for all the people that are actually paying the lower price for the good. But what about all the people that were willing to pay $4, $5, even $7? They're now unable to get a taco at all. Even if they wanted to pay more money, it's now against the law for a firm to sell them a good at a higher price. So there's lots of people who don't get a good at all because of the shortage. So those people don't like price ceilings. So if you're at equilibrium, that is efficient allocation, because remember, every good that is produced is purchased. The supply equals the demand. That's market clearing. When you have a price ceiling, you now have a shortage, and the market won't be cleared. There will be buyers sitting there who would happily pay for the good, and suppliers that would happily supply the good, and they're not able to. That is inefficient in our economy. Another major effect of price ceilings is that they lead to lower quality goods. Let's talk about why. So we learned before, what is the thing that motivates producers? Profit. If you said money, that's fine. So the idea is they're in it to make a profit. If there's a price ceiling, what is the motive that would make a producer want to improve the quality of their product? Let's say you want to make the best tacos in town. Usually people will pay more for the best quality good. But if the law says you're not allowed to sell tacos for more than $3, why would they make nice tacos? Why would you make fresh ingredients? Why would you use expensive things? Steak, guacamole, those ingredients tend to cost more. They're also higher quality. So you're going to be getting lots of low quality tacos, lots of grade F hamburger, and some wilted lettuce, but you're not going to have any quality improvements because there's no incentive for producers to make the product better if they're never going to get paid more for doing so. The final effect of price ceilings are they create black markets. You've probably heard this term before. A black market is a market where any goods and services are bought or sold illegally. So they could be because the good itself is made illegal, period. So drugs or prostitution, any of these things that you're just not allowed to buy, period, that would be on the black market. But what we're talking about here is a black market for goods that you cannot buy at a higher price. So what if somebody really wanted a very fancy taco, maybe with truffles and I don't know, a caviar taco? Think of an over-the-top, really high-quality, fancy taco. Somebody would have to sell them secretly in a black market. So maybe they would open up a restaurant out of their home. If people really want this, because there's a shortage of tacos created by that price ceiling, they're willing to pay more, and they're gonna have to go to the black market. So this is bad for the government because they're now unable to get tax revenue on any of those sales. So by creating the price ceiling, they've pushed a lot of goods out of the legal market into this black market. Now we've seen all kinds of negative effects that price ceilings have on the economy. So why do we have them at all? There's got to be some sort of benefit for them to exist. So the first reason is that there are some people that do benefit. Those few amounts of people that do get the good at a lower price are very happy. And there are some vocal groups that will petition the government enough to finally get what they want because they consider the price to be unfair. Now, a little review question here about whether we think these things are positive or normative economics. First of all, do you remember positive and normative? One of them is about those opinions that this thing should be raised or lowered, and one of them is about the facts that this thing will have this consequence. So price ceilings here are normative. Normative are the opinions. Remember, what does norm think? So if consumers are saying this price is unfair, there should be a price ceiling in effect to protect consumers, that would be normative economics. Okay, so back to why they exist. So the first reason, they benefit some consumers. The second reason that we have them is that if you have price ceilings long enough, it starts to distort what people think fair prices are. Imagine if you lived in a world where tacos were never more than $3. If all of a sudden we eliminated that price ceiling and the market took over and the equilibrium price went back to $5, people would feel like, wow, tacos are expensive. That's a luxury good, because the perception of fair gets totally thrown off. So it's very difficult to get rid of old price ceilings because it's totally affected what people think fair prices are. And what you think is fair impacts what you're willing to pay. So buyer perception becomes reality because people just won't pay higher prices, which will lower the demands back to what they think it should be. The next category of price controls are price floors. Price floors are what they sound like. They're a legal minimum, that you can't pay less than this amount for the good or service. The most famous example of a price floor would be the minimum wage, that workers felt like the natural equilibrium wages were too low, it was unfair, and so they asked for a increase, a price floor, that the wages cannot go below this certain amount. So if the EP, the equilibrium price, is considered too low, the price is set above the equilibrium. So let's talk about why price floors set below equilibrium have no effect. Remember, where do prices return to, no matter where they are? Where are they naturally trying to go back to? They're trying to go back to equilibrium. So here we have the price floor drawn. Any price above, so in this case, the equilibrium price is about $4.50. I'm sorry, the equilibrium price is $3. The price floor is set at $4.50. So let's say someone wanted to charge $6. Okay, the price is naturally trying to return to equilibrium. The price floor would stop it. So you could charge more than this, but you can't go under the price floor. Now, we're saying that a price floor below equilibrium has no effect. So what if somebody wanted to make a price floor at $2? If the price is anywhere below $3 equilibrium, it's trying to return to equilibrium, and a floor won't stop it from going up. A floor only stops things from going down. So a price floor below equilibrium does absolutely nothing. So let's go back to our taco example and talk about a price floor. So let's review, what was the EP, the equilibrium price? It was $5 because that's where supply meets demand. So at $5, who might say that price is way too low? We can't possibly sell tacos for that much. Producers. The only people that ever say prices are too low are producers. So let's say producers are very upset, they're going out of business, and they feel like the government should protect their jobs and say that this is an unrealistic price for tacos. We need a price floor that now says that tacos cannot be sold for under $8. So at $8, the demand for tacos is 2. The supply is 8. So if supply exceeds demand, what do you have? A surplus or a shortage? You have a surplus because there's a lot more being supplied than demanded. And how much exactly? You take the larger number, quantity supplied, 8, and subtract quantity demanded, 2, so the size of the surplus is 6. Which means producers will actually sell some tacos at $8 a taco, but only 2. And they're willing to supply, and they probably produced a lot more that'll just sit there being wasted because 6 of those tacos nobody wanted to buy at the higher price. Because of that surplus that we just saw, price floors also lead to inefficiency. Hopefully now you're noticing, wait, price ceilings had inefficient allocation of resources, and price floors are inefficient too. Yes, exactly. Any price control is inefficient. The only efficiency is true equilibrium and that market clearing price. If you have a price floor, that surplus says that the demand is going to be a lot less than the supply. So if only 2 of the good were demanded, the amount of that good in society is going to be a lot less than it would be if it was sold for a more reasonable price in that market, which means that that good is not going to be allocated, distributed throughout the economy as efficiently as it would be as well. The second effect of price floors are wasted resources. If the government is in charge of setting price floors and they set it above the equilibrium price, we just saw that that's going to cause a surplus. Now here's where it gets interesting. There are some cases in the law codes where if the government is responsible for creating the surplus, they're occasionally responsible for buying the surplus. So if they make a law and the taco suppliers convince the government to make tacos cost $8, they might also have the government buy them for any extra tacos that are produced. This is hugely wasteful. It definitely benefits the producers because they get to sell all of their goods at a higher price. Most of those goods in the surplus don't even go into the economy, they get destroyed. So the government only will do this for a lobbying group that is either very, very powerful or considered extremely important to the smooth operation of our economy, but it's very wasteful of money and the resources themselves that get wasted. The other category of wasted resources, you saw that minimum wage is a price floor, that it can't go below this, but that means that there are occasionally jobs where the company might say, I can't hire you because that job isn't worth minimum wage to me. So making prices go up creates a surplus of labor. There are now more people who are looking for jobs than will get paid at that point, and that's a wasted resource of labor resources. So good for the individual people that get paid that amount, but not good for the people that would take a job for less money. The wasted resources lead to this illegal activity. So this is another similarity between price ceilings and price floors. Price ceilings led to the black market. Price floors lead to different illegal activities. The idea is if businesses can benefit by having this price floor, where the price can't go under a certain amount, and if the government is responsible for buying up that surplus, there's a huge incentive for businesses to bribe the government to try to get them to put a price floor on the books, and that way they can sell their goods for a much higher price and maybe even get the government to be responsible for their surplus. This can also lead to illegal activities in terms of labor. We just saw that minimum wage creates a surplus of work. And if there's anybody who's willing to work for less than minimum wage, or maybe not have to pay taxes on their labor, those things are going to create this black market of labor where maybe day laborers are working off the books, not reporting it, that income is not being taxed by the government, all because of this price floor. The last effect of a price floor might seem a little bit odd. What's so bad about high quality? How can high quality be inefficient? Well, the idea is in order to justify that high price, you have to make the good higher quality. So an $8 taco is kind of expensive for a taco. So they're going to have to put a lot of high quality ingredients into the taco to have people pay that high price for it. So what if you didn't want a really high-end taco? Then this would be inefficient. It would be a waste if you took off all of those things because you really just wanted a cheap, simple taco. You can't pay less for it. So either you're going to waste the resources or you're not going to buy it at all because you just want a simple, lower quality, more economical version of the good. And you can't have it because price floors say that you've got to pay this high price or you can't buy it at all. So I hope you're seeing that the only time you have efficiency in an economy is on equilibrium. Economies are naturally moving back to equilibrium. So all price controls, price ceilings, and price floors, by keeping the economy from going back to equilibrium, they're creating these consequences in the economy.